ladies, very nice to be with you here in person. I'd like to start off by looking at the investing side in crypto. Let's just throw out a stat. Twice as many men invest in crypto than women. At the age group 18 to 29, it's 19% of women and 43% of men. Why is that, Samia?
Thank you, and it's great to be here. Thank you. It's such an important subject to discuss. I'm not surprised to hear the statistics. Actually, with BlockFi, we had a poll done in March for 1,000 women in the US, and we found that 90% of women have heard of crypto, but only 24% invested in crypto. So I think it could be something of education where they're exposed. Sometimes they're talking to their families. They're also exposed to media, and media is sometimes negative, and also they're less risk averse.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Quite high statistics. Quynh, have you found the same?
Yeah, I would say crypto is where the junctions of finance and tech meet together. And if you actually look at finance and tech, they're both very underrepresented in terms of women. So when you meet them both together, I think if you do the math, it's probably even more underrepresented. And I think certainly this is true when I look back at my experience back in traditional finance and actually now talking to more and more founders in this space. So part of my daily job is talk to either VC fund or talk to protocols or talk to like traditional finance and CFI businesses. And very rarely do I see women in meeting, in Zoom call. And I kind of surprised about this, and I kind of agree with what Sami said. Probably, women is a little bit more risk adverse, maybe are loyal to specific industry that they worked with before, or maybe from outside, just looking like, oh, well, how is crypto? It's just so different. What happened to Luna? What happened to USD? If I come in here, do I even have a job? I think these are all very interesting questions, but I think I would encourage that the people just actually reach out and talk more about it and do your research as well, because I think we're going to come to that point a bit later. But I would say that I would agree with that observation. Yeah.
And Adriana, what do you think on that?
So I think the stats are what it is, but I'm positive that it's changing. And actually, we've seen in the pandemic, I did research online. More and more women actually took control of their own finances because of troubles that they went through the pandemic, and just doing research online. I think if we empower women and educate, as Samia said, and give them a little push, because I do agree women tend to be a little bit more conservative, and we just think of like more scenarios than men. However, I do think if we empower women, we educate them, and we point them to the right resources, I am hopeful for the future that more women are going to invest in the space. And not only that, blockchain by nature, it's more inclusive. It's meant to be transparent. It's if you think about traditional finance, it was built in a time where women can't even vote. So in society now, women already have more rights. And I think as more projects led by women, and we're seeing that in the space as well, more investors will get into this space, and women will empower other women projects. So I'm very hopeful.
And you all have come from traditional finance. So what was it about moving to crypto that appealed to you?
For me, it was an opportunity to disrupt. So moving from traditional finance, it's really also giving opportunities to the underserved, to markets that where actually a lot of people, and also especially women, are unbanked. I think the World Bank said in 2019 that 56% of people without banks are actually women. And at BlockFi, for example, we work very closely with UNICEF, where we educate women and we give them the opportunity to go to investments into their crypto. All they need is a phone and internet. And this moves, this keeps women safe and not having underage marriage, etc. So it's all of this. It's the social impact that attracted me more than anything else.
Adriana or Quynh?
So what attracted me to crypto, I'm originally from Venezuela. So I come from a country that institutions have failed Venezuelans, a country that has hyperinflation. And I saw crypto as an opportunity of not only empowering women, but empowering societies that just the systems have failed them. a way of getting the unbanked banked, and a way of even in countries that we've seen massive immigration and massive, just fallouts, for people to help their people back at home with in form of remittances. Crypto makes it so easy, much cheaper and much faster. So frankly, I see crypto, I do believe in the impact of crypto, of making a real impact in society. Just traditional finance has not served every community the same way.
For me, it's probably more personal in the way that I've done traditional finance M&A for about 10 years. That was interesting, fun, early day, you'll be able to talk to all the C-suite and executive early on, and which is a very exciting experience. But when I see that there's a big gap in the market where crypto is exciting. From the outside, you can say it's scary, but when you start talking and meeting with all these entrepreneurs, builders, investors in this space, I actually would really surprised by the speed of innovation. And I just think, you know what? At this point, you don't know what you've done in the past in traditional finance. For me, it's one of my mentors that I got in the TradFi space. When I talked to him, and I literally, the entire time of me interviewing for a job was 2 hours walking around the park and just talk about all the implications of what could happen. I just kind of really excited about it. And I just came back and say, you know what? I take the job. And I resigned in about 2 weeks. So I think what would really important is whether it's for a greater good or for your own personal gain or your own personal ambitions, I would encourage all the women out there and all the men as well to just look for that personal point that would touch you and saying, actually, you know what, now I'm going to make a big jump. And I think crypto is an exciting place.
Wow, that's great to hear. Well, when we talked ahead of this conversation, Adriana, you talked about something very interesting. You talked about crypto protocols, and you said they're all created by men, and perhaps they could be created by women, and that might break down some of those barriers. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so, I think, so as I was explaining a little bit before, if you think about entrepreneurship or really people who start companies or start these protocols, is people that like to take risks, right? It by nature it tends to be men, but I think if we encourage crypto companies to build more inclusive cultures, and this is something I see at Blockdaemon, for example, our leadership, our CEO is a woman, our chief of staff, the VP of finance, our head of people's operations, our founder, Constantine, is a big advocate of women. If you create cultures where you can empower women and create women leaders, this is gonna, by nature, by inertia, will create in the future women-led protocols. We're already seeing some in the space like Bitcoin Lightning, the Tezos Foundation, Oasis, and I think there's just gonna be more and more of that as we create more women leaders and more experts in the space. I think we're leading towards that. And the more women-led protocols, also we're gonna see probably more women investors that wanna empower other women. So it's just gonna happen as a natural cycle.
If I had to put you all on the spot and say, okay, tell me, what is the biggest barrier to women investing in this space? What would that be?
I would say it's the knowledge, the perceived knowledge. Because one thing that I found from my own personal experience and also talking to people as well is that kind of you feel that you don't know enough to be in a room where you feel confident to say to the founder, the investor, and maybe people in your company that, hey, this is the way it should go. I think the valuation should be this. Or let me do some DD and come back to you. You feel like you're not there to be able to make that important decision. But I think back to myself, I have many years experience in this space. A lot of people across the table, maybe they're brilliant at what they're doing, but they haven't got that experience. That's why they come and talk to you. So it's very much we're on the same page, right? We don't have to be thinking that you have to know so much. And if you don't know, you're saying, take a minute, or you go and read. So many times on a call with companies, I just look at Twitter in the meantime. It's just like you just have to feel like you're good enough to make those judgments, make those calls, make the advice. And to be honest, if you're not good, people won't listen to it. So there's a very fair point there, fair trade-off there. So I just feel that confidence and that perceive know enough, there's that barriers that you kind of need to come across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with Quynh. Definitely, it's really knowledge, and because when one doesn't understand, it can be crypto, it can be anything else, there's a fear. So it's really important. It's actually our ethos at BlockFi is to educate and guide our clients. We're not selling products, it's a service to really educate clients because it's such a new market for all these traditional investors. And once it's understood, it's also about going into different verticals within the digital asset itself. Some of them they go via the yield aspect. Some of them, they use our BlockFi card to earn Bitcoin. It's such a starting point for amateurs. For example, they're very scared, but also the ones who are crypto novice, they actually go in it as well. And once they start understanding, they start seeing it as really a diversification in their asset allocation, and it's something really important for their future. And once it's understood, it's really important for them.
If I could be a bit controversial, when we talk about the fact that twice as men invest in crypto compared to women, does it matter?
It does in terms of the future of career and education, and also for the future generation. We would want to have this image of cryptocurrency that's available only for men, or only men invest in that. I think it's really important to be inclusive, to create a platform where everybody can really invest. That's really the beauty about blockchain.
Adriana, Quynh?
So, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Does it really matter? Just, so what? More men invest in crypto than women?
I mean, I think it's the situation now, but I think it does matter for the future. I mean, I think, as I said before, like blockchain was born out of transparency and inclusivity. Like anyone can be on blockchain. It doesn't really matter who you are, if man, woman, or whatever you define yourself. I think it matters because it goes against the nature of why blockchain was created.
I might add something. I think it's very important because if we look at all crypto industry is very early day. And if you think about all the money made in early day of the internet, what happened? All the founders, all the investors make so much money, what they do? They go back and invest. So we are at the point where we can define the whole next generation wealth. And you think about it, if there's not enough participation in both gender, I'm not saying man or woman invest better or the other, but we can risk repeating ourselves in the previous cycle of, let's say, internet, the financial, because women supporting women, successful women support other women, and men would like to also support women as well. I found that a lot of my mentors are actually very supportive of women, in the early day where they actually starting their career. So this is a defining moment where, equality could happen in the next 3-4 years or 5 years without looking at just today. Yeah.
Does it surprise any of you that this is a new form of finance, yet it has still kind of fallen into the old way? We still have the gender issues. Why is that? It's new, it should be a clean slate, it should be different. Look at the century that we're living in, look at all the movements that are going on. Why has it fallen into that same pattern?
No, it actually doesn't surprise me. My background is in traditional finance, and if we take a step back and we think about 50 years ago, when women in the US would apply for a credit card, for example, they were asked with a barrage of questions. Are you married? Do you have children? Do you plan on having children? If you're divorced, if you're widowed, you would have to bring a man with you and co-sign with you to get a credit card. Thankfully, the Senate pushed this, it made it illegal with the credit card in Credit Act in '74. But these things are so important because now in 2022, we're still talking about discrimination. NASDAQ is now not allowing any company getting listed by August 22 unless you have a woman in the board. So we need to bring awareness. We can't take it for granted. And even if it's disrupting certain things and within the finance, unfortunately, we're still underrepresented.
Yeah, and Adriana, Quynh, why have we fallen into the same, route that we were in before?
I think just because of the nature because it's a risky, it's a new world. It's something frankly, it's a little intimidating. If you really don't understand about cryptography or like how traditional finance works, from an outsider, it can be extremely intimidating to get in. So, and all this new jargon, I learned a new acronym every day. And like I work with, all my clients are like 25, they're like 7 years younger than me. Like it can be frankly like very intimidating, but I think if we start teaching, even if it's like basics of like cloud servers and like bare metal servers like in high school or middle school, or actually if we start younger and push women and push high school counselors to say, look, the most sought out career right now is being a developer. You can get even $1 million salary range. Like, why not? I think like even kids these days should even consider twice going to college and just learn how to code, because I think that's where the future is going. And they should learn Solidity, because that's, I think that's going to be a very lucrative career for them. So I think it all bears down to education, and it needs to start from a much earlier age.
Well, actually, that was going to be my next question. Would you say that one way to address this situation is to educate, well, boys and girls at a much younger age, so that we encourage girls to go more into this field, because it's got a huge future?
Yeah, I would say I completely agree with that. If I have a few nieces and nephews now, and I observe them as a kid, and I was saying both of them are pretty curious equally. I would say the girls are probably more curious about things going around, like computers, like games, everything. She figured it out pretty fast. And I just questioned myself, how is from this to this inequality that's happening today about tech and everything going on? Where did we go wrong? And I don't know, maybe too much of these apps, and maybe there are things going on, but I just felt that at some point girls are probably told that, some other careers were better. I was told that, so maybe I'll not assume that other people get. And at GSR, that's something we were looking at, because we were thinking that probably girls, especially not in this environment, but let's say in places where they're probably less fortunate, where they don't have the experience or ability to learn. So take that curiosity and teach them something new. So we have this Tech Innovation Girls Group, where we would leave actually at GSR, we're 25% of women. We would take some of people from business development, some from technology team, and actually teach girls how to code through a virtual environment. And we keep in touch with the girls for like every 3 months or so to actually see where they develop. But I'm very curious. I mean, if anyone have the answer, I just don't know how we get from very curious girls and boys on the same age, same class, and to some point we lead to this place where we talk about inequality, woman and man and boy.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Samia?
I was just going to say, I just hope, if we bring awareness, that one day we won't have to have a panel about gender and women. So that would be for the future
Yeah,
generation.
it should be a non-issue.
Exactly.
It should be a non-issue. Do you think, and I think you talked about this when we spoke ahead of the panel, but do you think there is a personality type that working in crypto is better suited to, or is it just very general?
I would say it's to be open-minded. To be open-minded and willing to learn, and being ready to really disrupt the known, the traditional aspect of things. And for that, you have to just take risks. Doesn't mean losing money, but take risk into disrupting a system that doesn't necessarily work for everybody, for countries, for central banks, etc. So that would be, and definitely being able to work in a fast-paced environment and in a team.
And do you have to be more willing to embrace risk than, say, working in traditional finance? Is it more of that kind of environment, or
not really? I mean, having worked nearly 20 years in traditional finance, I think I lost my hair in 2008 when the recession happened. We're in an unregulated environment at the moment, but that doesn't mean that things are riskier, because at BlockFi we're actually structured in a way like traditional finance. We have risk management, we have the AML, KYC, everything is structured in the same way. So it's just a question of being transparent and paving the way into digital assets, make it safer.
Let me ask you all about recruitment into the sector. How are you finding it when you're looking for new talent? What kinds of people are applying? Is it more men that are applying for jobs than women? How are you finding it? Adriana.
So, I usually get more asked by men for crypto jobs than women, but I am actually really surprised. Like, I got the first person from my MBA class, a woman that wanted to work in crypto and was curious about it, and she just asked me on her own. And more with even with the Luna situation that's going on, like I've more of my friends, female, have been asking me more questions. Like I think it's pointing towards the right direction. So I think we just have to keep on pushing a little bit until this doesn't become an issue and we don't have to do more panels of fixing this.
Yeah, I would say something. It's a two-way relationship when it comes to recruitment. What I found is that, and I came back to some point that Samia made. I completely agree. In this environment, you don't have, in crypto, it looks scary, but it's not risk advert. If you were to do risk might be different, but if it was to do finance in crypto or finance in traditional finance, they're all equally complicated in different aspects. And if anything, you're probably afraid that you haven't learned something, or in the past, now just learn something new. I would say a lot of instruments in the traditional finance are actually a lot more difficult to learn than crypto. Because crypto, you have a lot of resources, people willing to open, will talk to you, they explain to you how many minutes you have, let's talk. There's so many videos out there explaining how Luna and crypto work versus how derivatives work in finance. That's fact, I
totally
actually did that. And so it's a two-way relationship where I found it very difficult to get CV from women when I specifically asked a recruitment that, let's try and see open-minded, maybe because we haven't looked at the right channel. And I think that's come to the mentality of 100% sure that you want a job before you interview for it. And I fall into this before in the past. And you don't have to, because the job, nothing to decide yet. Take the interview, talk to people, find out what they like. Maybe you like them, maybe you don't like them. You can decline the job. Well, don't decline the job and then go somewhere else. That's bad. But I was just saying that be open-minded to what Samia said, and then actually take the job. You don't have to take the call. You don't have to be 100% sure about everything, because even if people sit in the chair talking about it, they're not 100% sure about it every day, all day.
Samia, you were saying recruiting, you're finding it quite challenging getting women to apply.
Unfortunately, I receive a lot of CVs from male candidates. So I really want to tell women out there, like there's a misconception, maybe misinformation, to not hesitate. Having been, in this space for a year as a mom as well, it's so flexible, unlimited holidays, the children, it's so child-friendly as well and very open-minded. I mean, at BlockFi, we're about 28% female employees, which represents, I think the blockchain sector is only 8% at the moment.
Wow.
So we're trying to really grow that, especially our co-founder who's a woman. It's really important for her. So I would just really tell women to really go for it, apply, because I'm having, very interesting CVs, male executives in traditional finance willing to jump ship and take a cut, etc., to get into the sector. And I want women to do that as well. It would be amazing.
And do you have to take a cut, quite a big cut, if you're coming from traditional finance into crypto?
Not necessarily, but if one really wants to get into that space desperately, they don't mind it, some of them, because they just want to get, it is very different, the way it's set up. Yeah.
Interesting.
But my point to that is that so there's part, salary, benefit, bonus, options, there's a lot of things you can look at, right? And I would say if you're in it for the short term and looking at pay, it's probably, you look around, right? You're saying that potentially, it's good. But I would say if you look at crypto, maybe look at it a longer term perspective, because every time you look at something short enough time, you always see it extremely volatile. So I encourage everyone who I interview and look at things a little bit longer period. If we look at 3, 4, 5 years, it's actually brilliant. You cannot measure another asset class that is better than this. And if you were to get options from company, you cannot get a better options at other company that actually quite packed an asset class actually going like this. So
the upside is much higher.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in the longer run.
Great. I think we've got time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Do we have any questions from the room? I think we've got a microphone, yeah.
So it's,
Hold it close to your mouth.
for me as newcomer to your industry, I just feel overwhelmed and overexcited. And I was just thinking, just listening to Miss Samia Bayou in how you are driving the change towards better and faster gender equality, as well as economic equalities all around the globe. If you were, just imagine a scenario where you would in the next 5 years have a, let's say, 10 trillion global crypto economy, what are the aspects, socio-economical aspects of betterment globally amongst all societies, global societies, you would like to see, or you would indeed expect from a crypto industry to bring a forward in a much better and faster way?
For me, it would be really just transparency and inclusive, really just, and for women worldwide, globally, to have that access, to receive payments, to transfer, like what happened, unfortunately, there's a lot of people suffering from inflation at the moment. Argentina is up by 50%, so there's a lot of countries that are going through that, and they use cryptocurrency to help, like El Salvador, etc. So I think it would be really like a social impact, and also an asset allocation to diversify their assets is something important.
I would just add one thing to that, which is financial inclusion leads to financial independence. And financial independence is a very powerful thing that women could ask for in not just developed country, but also in, not just developing country, but also in developed country. And I think this is a powerful time, the right moment, I would say, to get into that and get your own financial independence.
Hi there, Guy from Tagus Capital. Well, thank you very much. First of all, congratulations on the panel. I think this is such an important subject, and unfortunately, is one event that is not crowded. I think is an image that we need to change things. And one question that I would like to make, and I think I agree with your point that in the future, this is going to change. There is no other way around. Maybe it's going to be 50-50. Maybe it's going to be more. How do you, if you think about that we are there, how different would be crypto world if this was the case? How do you feel that would be different? Would be an impact on asset prices? Would have an impact on risk management? Would some of the projects have failed or not? I'll be very curious to see how do you see that new world?
What I would say is the more it's regulated, the more there's transparency, the safer people will feel to get into it. So this is, I think, the right path to go towards. Just bringing awareness and explaining to people what it is really. Because there's so much negative media about cryptocurrency, unfortunately, it doesn't really help.
But was your question if it's 50-50 women?
Yes.
Yeah, he
I
was
couldn't
saying,
hear well.
Yeah, it wasn't that clear. If he was saying if we get to the point where we have, say, 50-50 men, women working in crypto, how might that change the sector in terms of risk management and all those other factors? Will that change the way things work in the sector? Is that correct? Yeah.
I think it might avoid some crisis because there'll be women in the room that are going to challenge certain egos. Yeah. And might avoid certain collapses. So I think it's not only diversity of gender, it's diversity of thought in the room, and that's what's needed in the space.
Yeah. And on that very positive note, I think we will end the panel. A round of applause for my panel. Thank you.